Some of you may not be quite finished with your lunch, but just go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started. It was sometime back in 1992 when, in a conversation with Bob Grissom, Richard Sinclair suggested that some kind of an award should be given to John and Lucille Britt for all that they had done for our hobby. After consideration, it was decided that at the 1993 HOACGA luncheon, that John and Lucille would be given an award. That was a very nice luncheon, and later on it was decided, why not give a John and Lucille Britt award each year at the convention to a couple who had, or a person who had advanced the hobby, who had done something that would forever impact Carnival glass. So, in 1994, Floyd and Lucille Whitley were given the first John and Lucille Britt Award. Let me read you the recipients since that time. 1995, Carl and Fern Schrader. 1996, Chuck and Marge Kramer. 1997, the award went to Marie McGee. 1998, Bob, Rosa, and Imogene Grissom. 1999, George and Mavis Loescher. Year 2000, Richard and Carol Sinclair. 2001, Tom and Sharon Mordini. This year, HOACGA is pleased to present the award to Charles and Eleanor Mochel. Let me tell you a little bit about the Mochels. Seriously, they've been collecting Carnival glass since 1968 and were charter members of HOACGA when the club was first organized back in 1972. If my calculation's right, that's over 30 years ago. Eleanor was on a committee which was formed to write the first bylaws for HOACGA. She also suggested at that time that the good luck symbol should be HOACGA's symbol on publications after that date. Eleanor has served the club as vice president, and on 2 different occasions she's been our bulletin secretary, and she's our bulletin secretary today. The Mochels chaired the 1986 HOACGA convention, and they suggested back at that time that the club start giving little cuspidors for the room display awards. They coordinated the Millersburg glass display at the 1990 convention and assisted with the plate display in the year 2000. And this year they've been very much involved in developing the display which we're all enjoying of grape and cable. The Mochels have 2 sons, Kevin and Brent, and they're old enough that they're grandparents. They don't look it, but they are. They've been married for 34 years. That's long enough that they're probably on their 3rd bottle of Tabasco sauce by now. It's been a great marriage. Eleanor told me that Charles has always treated her royally. He takes her to Burger King once a week and Dairy Queen when he can't get to Burger King. I don't know how old Charlie is, but he's reached the age where when he blows out these candles on his birthday cake, he has to jump back kind of quick to keep from being burned. Charles is at the age when Eleanor says that he thinks happy hour is a 60-minute nap. Charles and I have something in common. At one time, we were both employed by Hallmark Cards at their international headquarters in Kansas City. I didn't know Charlie, and Charlie didn't know me, but we had a lot of good mutual friends. Eleanor's a nurse, and Charlie quit working for Hallmark so he could work with Eleanor, and they bought a care facility. Ed Kramer's been over to their care facility when they had it, and he said it was so clean you could eat off the floor. So that's quite a reputation. After Charlie left Hallmark and they started their business, they ran that business for quite some time, and then they are now enjoying some retirement. They have a beautiful home in Overland Park. If you've never been at the Mochels, you can see some great glass. Over the years, the Mochels have acquired some very, very expensive glass. They've acquired that on the lay-awake plan. Charlie goes out and buys it, and Eleanor lays awake wondering how they're going to pay for it. Charlie's had some serious health problems, but his doctor says he's doing so well now that he can look at the bill one of these days. He does take some expensive prescriptions. One of his bottles says, take 1 pill whenever you think you can afford it. But we're very pleased that he is in good shape now, and we hope that he continues to be that way. We're pleased to honor the Mochels. They've advanced our hobby. They're a fun couple. It's great to be around them, and it's people that it's always good to call your friend. This afternoon we have 4 gentlemen to help honor the Mochels. These men, along with their wives, have all been recipients of this award. So they've been in this chair where Eleanor and Charlie are today. It's a real pleasure to have George Loescher here today with his wife Mavis, and George is going to say a few things about the Mochels. George?
a pleasure to be here today. A year ago, this date, I was in the hospital, and it's the first convention that Mavis and I have ever missed for the Heart of America. And they were about to wheel me out here on a hospital bed, but they didn't. Today is a very special day for the Mochels, but it's also a very special day for my wife and I. Today is our 50th wedding anniversary. I was called and somebody asked me to say something nice about Charlie, but I couldn't think of anything. Well, I know one thing too, I forgot to tell you. Last night, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and it was my turn to cry on our wedding anniversary. Can't read my own writing. Can you imagine that? I was talking to Mavis, what do you say about Charlie? And she said, well, so many things about him. One thing about Charlie, he's full of manure. I said, I can't say that. I said, I didn't say that. Entrepreneur. Last year we missed the convention, as we said before, and someone was telling me that Charlie was running around with 2 black eyes. And I didn't see this, so I don't know that it's true, but they said he had 2 black eyes. And so I asked how he got them. Well, he was in church, and a lady stood up in front of him, and her dress kind of got caught in her hind end area. And Charlie, being the gentleman that he is, he reached out and he pulled the dress out. And she, in turn, slugged him. So Charlie said, well, that's not nice, what I done. So Charlie reached up and he shoved the dress back in. And she slugged it again. Charlie is, we've known him for, a zillion years. He really looks the same now as he did the first time we met him 30 years ago, old. I guess his health is real good, but I understand he's suffering from the furniture disease. And that's where his chest has fell into his drawers. He's also on a diet now. I don't know if you heard about that, but he's on a Valium diet. And this is where you throw 10 Valium in your mouth. You can't shut it so all the food falls out. He's a man of many talents. And one is that he was trying to be a country music writer. And I might have told some of you folks have heard this before, but Charlie was going to be a country music writer. He called me and he had this ideal song. And he was saying that he read it to me, and he says, it goes like this, that I went down by the river and I threw my clothes in the grass, waded into the water and the water went up to my knees. And I said, Charlie, it doesn't rhyme. He said, if the water would have been deeper, it would have. He's quite a hunter, too. I guess you folks knew that. And he and Bob Grissom were out hunting in Wisconsin in our area, and they got lost. And Charlie heard that if you fire into the air, somebody will find you. And they'll find us. So Charlie, he fires up in the air, and nothing happens. He does her again, and still nobody is there to help him. 3rd time, and nothing happens. So Bob says to him, Charlie, I hope we get help this next time, because we only got 1 arrow left. Charlie ran into a young lady one day on the street corner. She said, I'd do anything for $50. So Charlie loaded her in the car and took her home and had her paint the house. I was going to pick on Whitley, but he's speaking last, and if I say anything about him, he'll tear me apart. So on, I want to see a little word about him. You know, the one thing I'd like to close on is that the award that they're receiving today is an award that Mavis and I have not taken lightly. We received it in 1999, having known the man very well, he and his wife, that it's named after John Lucille Britt. You couldn't ask, just couldn't ask for nicer people than the Britts. And like Cliff said, they did so much in their articles and to help other people. And for us to get an award, and we've had a lot of carnival glass and a lot of glass, but this is our prize. This is not something that you go out and you buy. It's not going to be up at auction. You can't say, well, I got $10,000, I want to buy that vase. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to earn the right to earn that vase. And Charlie and Eleanor, you guys have sure done that. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Richard Sinclair.
Thinking very seriously of retiring from the Carnival glass circuit. I sure as hell don't want to try and follow Gail. And now they put me after George, so a little hard to follow on these people. I'm here today to talk about the book of Revelation. To give you some revelations. Charlie, when he decided to give up the home, received a camera from the people that worked there. And if you know Charlie, you know that he speaks from the heart and very straightforward. And he said, what am I going to do with this camera? And somebody suggested that maybe he would like to go out and photograph all the carnival glass. And he said, I already have all of the carnival glass. So he couldn't do that. So he decided, what he decided to do, as he was getting a little older, he decided that he needed religion and that he would go out across the United States and he would photograph every beautiful church, cathedral, and so on across the nation. And so he decided he would do that with his new camera. And so he started in San Francisco, and he found the most beautiful church there, and he was taking pictures of it. And he found a phone booth, and it was made out of gold. And on it said, phone calls to God, $35,000. And he talked to the minister or priest, and he said, well, it's a direct line to God. It's not cheap. And he took a picture of it, and he thought, wow, that's really something. So anyhow, then he went on to Seattle, and he found the most beautiful church there. Sure enough, there was another one of those gold telephone booths, $35,000. Same story, direct line to God. Went to Utah, and went to a tabernacle there, and same thing. Finally got to Texas. Got to Dallas, North Dallas, found the most beautiful church there, and he found a gold phone booth, and it said 35 cents. And he said, what's the deal? All of those other churches, it was $35,000, but in Texas, it's only 35 cents. The minister said it's a local call here. Well, I'll tell you how long that Charlie and Eleanor have been collecting carnival glass and have participated. A number of years ago, and it always seems like a couple of years ago, and it's probably more than that, we did the history of HOACGA. And as I was digging through some boxes to find some interesting information, I found baby pictures. And I thought, my God, there haven't been any babies born in this organization in years. But it goes back that far because, in fact, when I checked, it was a picture of their oldest son. And so that tells you that they've been collecting for a while. If you have never worked in a carnival glass organization, you can't probably really appreciate the kind of work that they have done for this club and for other clubs. But I ask you this, if you have ever been an editor of a newsletter, can you imagine the work that it takes to do it once a month? For those of us that have been editors of news journals that are quarterly, it seems like they come every month. But for once a month, it is a never-ending. I bet you never get to go to a movie or go out to eat or whatever, because it's always there staring you in the face. And so I hope that you will thank them for their hard work. I think the two of them have been dedicated. I think that they have promoted Carnival Glass. They certainly have worked hard, and they're nice people. So my congratulations to them.
Last year's recipient was the Mordinis. We have Tom here today. Tom?
Well, I'd like to ask, first of all, I'd like to ask Richard and Floyd, did we ever go home? It seems like that we're on this podium every year about the same time. All right. We always have an excuse as to where we were on April the 26th or 7th, right? Well, it's fun. I enjoy it. Charlie and Eleanor have been friends of Sharon and I for ever since we've been in Carnival Glass, which hasn't been near as long as they were in Carnival Glass, or they have been. I believe we started in about 1980, and they certainly preceded us long before that. But before I get into this and forget to mention this, I also want to mention that as long as we've been involved in Carnival, I can always remember that Brent has been involved in Carnival too. He was just a kid when we first started collecting, and he would come down to our room, and I remember the first time he came down and he walked in and he said some words that didn't make any sense at all, and he was goo-goo or something, gaga, and I said, Brent, go back to your room and tell your mother to change your diaper. You remember that, Brent? But Brent is probably as instrumental in the Mochel family regarding Carnival Glass as Charlie and Eleanor. He's always been a part of it, and he's loved the glass as much as they have. I know he does. So you're to be congratulated too. We had the pleasure of going to Charlie and Eleanor's home only once. They took us out there. They had just bought the house and took us through this neighborhood. And when we got there, I couldn't believe the size of this house and how gorgeous it was. We toured the house and saw the glass and everything. And if you've never been there, you should really make it a point to get out to their home. It's beyond belief. Oh, and the daily changing of the guard is a nice touch, Charlie. Well, I'm not gonna sit up here and pick on Charlie very much, but I'd rather talk a little bit about Eleanor. Eleanor is a hard-working person for this organization. She writes a great newsletter, not just this time around, but the last time. And me, being, well, I should say Sharon and I, being the current editors of the American Carnival Glass newsletter and past editors of Lincoln Land, I know the job that she has to face every single month. And like Richard says, we only do it now on a quarterly basis. And it seems like the quarters roll around about every other week. In fact, I no sooner get the newsletter in the mail and Sharon says, don't forget, we've got another newsletter coming up and you better get started right now. And if it wasn't for Sharon prodding me on, it probably wouldn't get done until the last 3 days. But it's a tough job, and you're to be congratulated for the great work that you do. Eleanor she started a series of surveys, and I'm sure you've read her surveys. She works hard at these, and she goes out and tries to get all the information she can on certain types of Carnival glass. And every month it's different. I don't recall what this last one was, but after reading a number of these, I realized that the response to these surveys is probably not as good as it should be. Well, then I realized also that she's probably taking surveys of the wrong things. If you want a good survey, and if you want to get a lot of people participating, Eleanor, you can't ask them how many aqua opal punch sets there are, or how many blue Millersburg pipe humidors there are. You've got to get involved in a survey where you can get a little bit better response. So I just thought I'd help you out with your next survey. But give you an idea of how you get a response. Well, I spent the last 2 months on a survey of what I'm going to call miscellaneous carnival glass. And I didn't ask for too many different things, but the first one was on the leaf ray nappy. We found out that there are 87,590. As of the latest report, there's 87,590, but there may be more out there that we don't know about. We did a survey on LBJ hats and found that there's 3,109 of them, and one of the people made a comment that all LBJ hats are found in Texas. There are unconfirmed reports that some prominent Texas collectors have hundreds of these in their own individual collections. Scotty powder jars. There are, well, we only got 12,244 responses, but the mate to this would be the Bambi. The Bambi powder jar. And George Loescher has reported that he has about 35 of these in his own collection. George is the most prominent Bambi collector, or at least the only one that will admit it. And we have others. We did a survey on the urn vase, also referred to by George as the urinal vase. There's a report of one of these known in pastel marigold too, but we couldn't confirm that. Anyway, I'm going to give you this survey so that you can see what kind of stuff you should be looking into. Charlie, kid story. I love it. Every time Charlie comes into my room, he looks at me and says, "Cute story." And then he starts telling me a story that never quits. Charlie is a numbers man. He wants to know how many there are of this and how many there are of that. You can't hardly get through a conversation with Charlie without finding out how many there are of just about anything. I asked Charlie, I says, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" And he said, "I don't know, how many chickens are we talking about?" Just can't concentrate. Well, like I said, Charlie, I didn't come up here to give you a hard time, and I'm not going to. But Sharon and I would like to count you and Eleanor and Brent and the rest of your family as our friends. And I truly mean that. We've always had a good relationship, and I hope we will for a long time. Thank you.
Time to get serious.
As usual, everything has been said. Am I supposed to eat it? Charlie and Eleanor and I and Cecil have been friends for a long time. In fact, several times Charlie and I talk about the market, Carnival glass. I gave Charlie a good stock tip one time. I don't believe he's called for another one. anyway, I can make a few comments here about some things that hasn't been touched on this morning. Most of you don't realize that Charlie was raised on a farm. And I mean, he was raised way back in the sticks. Is that right, Charlie? He was so far back in the sticks that when he wanted to go to town on Saturday, he had to leave on Wednesday. So anyway, he was raised up on a farm in central Missouri. Y'all read about us picking cotton. Six was a mean cotton picker, I'll tell you that. But a lot of us had, poor starts like that. But Charlie was on his farm, and one of my friends come by one day, and Charlie had a pig holding it up, letting it eat an apple off a tree. And the guy said, "Charlie, why don't you shake the tree and get some apples on the ground and put that pig down and let him eat. You'll save a lot of time." He said, "Hell, time doesn't mean anything to a pig." Charlie was on his farm one day, trying to chase a rabbit down. He needed something to eat for lunch, and so he was chasing this rabbit, and he stubbed his toe real bad. Tore his toe up. So he got on his little old mule, and he went to town, and he went to a clinic. And who do you think was there to fix Charlie's toe? So anyway, she patched Charlie's toe up, and got it all fixed up, and she was looking at him, and she could tell by the way that Charlie was holding and hugging and kissing that old dirty toe. They would probably make a good, kind father and a husband. And she said, "I think I'll marry this little hick and see what I can do with him." And so she did. And all of her life, how many years? 32 years she'd been dragging old Charlie along and helping him with all of his endeavors. And here you see him now with money in the bank, big Carnival glass collection, $1,000 support. And you've done a great job. They say, I've heard people say, that they've both been extremely successful. They've been able to make more money than their two grown sons can spend. That's just spooky. A lot of that's true. But Charlie had moved off the farm, and he's in Kansas City. He had rental property and money in the bank before he married Eleanor. And so they've been very successful ever since. I know Charlie was in the rest home business, and he kind of got out of it. I said, "Well, whenever we get down close to the end, we'll check into one of Charlie's old rest homes, and sit around and talk about Carnival glass and visit a little bit." I was out talking to him one day, and Charlie and I were in the hall, leaned back in her chair, looking up down the hall, and that was years ago when the big fad of streaking was going on. So two looked like maybe 90-year-old ladies pulled off all their clothes down the hall and streaked by Charlie and I. I kind of startled me. Charlie didn't say a thing, and I looked over at Charlie. I said, "Charlie, what were those ladies wearing?" He said, "I don't know, but whatever it was, sure needed ironing." Seriously, when you think of the Mochels and Carnival glass, you think of iridescence in color. If old Woody was here, we call him the word coloration, wouldn't it? When you see Charlie's collection, you understand what color he is. Truly remarkable collection. I know a lot of us have sat around and discussed various Carnival glass collections, and a lot of us put this collection in the top 10. Now, some of us don't judge Carnival glass collections by the vast numbers. You judge it by quality and iridescence, and for us, you rate a Carnival glass collection as the number of pieces in that collection that probably exceed $10, $15, or $20,000. And when you look at his collection, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at what Seaside makes in the top, one of the ones in the top 10. Certainly, you've birth been dear to us in Carnival glass. You're, deserving recipients of this award, the John Britt Award, and we want to congratulate you.
George, Richard, Tom, Floyd, thank you for your comments. It's very much of a pleasure to have John and Lucille's daughter here today to present the award to Eleanor and Charles. So Eileen, if you'd like to come forward.
It is my pleasure to award this to Charles and Eleanor Mochel in my folks' honor. They would be very, very proud. Thank you.
We'd like to have the Mochels give them the opportunity to say something to you. Eleanor?
I was the one elected, so here I am. We're glad that you all decided to come to the luncheon and share this time with us. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for giving us this honor, and we do count it an honor. And I'd also like to thank our speakers, Mr. Sinclair, Mr. Mordini, and Mr. Whitley, and Mr. Lozier, and they still are our friends. Also, we appreciate Eileen coming. Her husband was having some surgery today, so she really did make a sacrifice to come. Also, I'd like to introduce our family that's here today. I know you know Brent and Sarah, our youngest son, Kevin, our oldest son, and his wife, Christy, with the baby, and then my sister and her husband, Virginia and Bob Schaumeyer, my nephew and his wife, Frank and Lisa Carroll. And we appreciate them coming today. I thought I would give you a couple of our early experiences in collecting Carnival glass. It was in 1968, shortly after we were married, that we were first introduced to Carnival glass. I'm a nurse and I was working in a physician's office, and one of our little patients by the name of Ophelia brought in a box of orange glass and asked me if I wanted to buy it for $4. And I said, well, I really didn't know what the glass was, and I'd like to show it to my husband. And she said, that's fine, just take it home and get back in touch with me. So that's what we did, and I put the glass in the garage and kind of forgot about it. And then I had an aunt to die unexpectedly, and the holidays came and went, and the box of orange glass was still in the garage. So I told Charles either we had to take the glass back or go find out what the orange glass was. And so we decided that we would go to some antique shops and see if they could tell us what it was. And the first shop that we went to told us that it was Carnival glass, and that it was lattice and bouquet, and we had 4 place settings. And she said that they had made Carnival glass in all different kinds of colors and different patterns, and that sounded interesting to us, and we thought maybe we'd like to check into that more. We also went to some other antique shops, but one antique owner told us about the Antique Trader. And I know it's different today than what it was back in 1968. But in 1968, there were a lot of Carnival glass ads in the Antique Trader, and you got to know people across the United States. So we subscribed to the Antique Trader, and we did buy some glass out of the Antique the new collectors today have a big advantage over what we had when we first started, because there was very little written material about carnival glass then. Compared to today, it's a whole different situation. We heard of Marion Hartung at Emporia, Kansas, and decided that we would go see her. She was writing carnival glass books. And if you would take a piece of glass to her that she didn't have in her books already, she would have someone draw a picture behind you of the piece of glass, not take a picture of it, and put it in her book. So we went to her house, and her glass was in the basement, and we went down to her basement and picked out a few pieces of glass and made our purchases, and we were getting ready to leave. And we walked past her dining room area where she had a highboy, and on top of the highboy was the most beautiful cobalt blue Northwood Peacock's plate. We'd never seen anything so beautiful. And so we asked her how much the plate was, and she said, well, it's $125. And so we thanked her for her time and laughed. And on the way home that day, we both said we'd never pay over $125 for any piece of carnival glass. My, how we have changed. We continued to collect carnival glass and thoroughly enjoyed it, and Charles had decided that he'd kind of like to start collecting tumblers. And we would learn a lot of patterns that way. And so some of the pieces that we had purchased early on, we decided that we would sell, and he could collect tumblers with that money. We have been fortunate to collect some nice pieces. We got an amethyst thistle plate early on for $50. And we had some other plates and a wishbone bowl or two and just different things. And so we decided that we would put an ad in the Kansas City Star and advertise the carnival glass pieces for sale that we hadn't fallen in love with. And then we'd take the money and buy tumblers. So, can you guess who was the first couple to come knocking at our door from the ad in the paper? It was John and Lucille Britt. Now, they lived in Manhattan, Kansas, and we lived in Kansas City on the Kansas side. And how they found out about our ad, we don't know. But they were the first couple to come. And they made a few purchases and sat down and talked with us about carnival glass. Now, you know about John and Lucille. They knew a lot about carnival glass, and we knew very little. And so they talked to us and told us how they'd go on buying trips, and their car would literally be packed tight with carnival glass when they got home. And so each time John and Lucille would come to the house, they would ask about the amethyst thistle plate. They liked to buy it. And so we said no, we really wanted to keep that plate. And so each time they would stop on their way back to Manhattan after they'd been on a buying trip, why they would come to the house and John would unload box after box. And if any of you ever saw their car, you knew it was just packed tight. You could not get not one more box of glass in that car. And he would carry in the boxes of glass, and they would unpack them on our living room floor. And this is when they were collecting a lot of water pitchers too, and we saw the most beautiful water pitchers. We had no idea they existed. And plates, bowls, everything you can imagine they had. And we were really impressed, knowing that we would never be able to afford anything like they had. So he continued to come by the house and continued to ask each time about our thistle plate. As you know, John could. And so one time, I guess our defenses were down, and he asked if we'd sell him the plate. And so we sold our $50 thistle plate for $500 and thought we were well on our way to being rich. We continued to collect, and Charles got a good tumbler collection together, and we collected other pieces too, but the emphasis was on tumblers at that time. And we decided it was time to go back and see Mrs. Hartung again. So we went back and went down to her basement again where she kept her glass. And once when we were there, she had the aqua opal punch bowl that later sold at her auction that Don Moore bought for $12,500. It wasn't for sale at that time, but it was with for sale glass, and that quite impressed us. And we made our purchases, and we were going out her door, and I told Charles on her front porch, she had an older home with a big front porch, I said, Charles, did you see the little green compost in the basement? And he said, no, he hadn't noticed it. I said, well, it was marked rare on it. And he said, well, he didn't know. And I said, well, I am just sure that compost is the one that John and Lucille Britt told us if we ever had a chance to buy it, we should buy it. And he said, well, we better go back in and buy it then. And so we went back in and bought the little green compost for $60 and left. Joe Olson, who the older collector would know, was writing his newsletters then and his Tumblr news. And we had gotten to be friends with him, and he would call if we were going to an auction and find out what happened at the auction and who bought what for how much, and then put it in his newsletter. And his newsletter wouldn't always be quite correct, as most of you know. But anyway, Charles told me about our new little green compost. And Joe had lived in Ohio, and he was well-versed on Carnival glass. And of course, we were still plenty green without Carnival glass. And so when Charles told him about our little green compost, he said, well, he'd love to have that little green compost, and he would trade an inverted strawberry tumbler for it, amethyst one. But he wanted $50 to boot. And so, sounded okay to us. So we went over to his house and traded off the only known green Olympic compost plus $50 for an inverted strawberry tumbler. Well, we learned many lessons when we were starting out. And we continue to learn lessons, but not to that degree. The compost was sold at old Joe Olson's auction, and it went for $700, and the Loziers were smart enough to buy it, and they still have it. There is one other Olympic compost, one in green and one amethyst, and the Fries own the amethyst one. One day we saw in the Kansas City Star that there was going to be an auction in town, and they advertised Carnival glass. And so we decided we'd go and see if there was anything we were interested in. And so we went, and Carnival glass was put up for sale. And there was another couple in the audience that kept bidding on Carnival glass. And so during the auction, as you know Charles does, he gets up and goes around and visits, and he said, I'm going to go over and see who that couple is. And so we went over and talked to him, and it happened to be Bill and Dorothy Taylor. Some of the older collectors will remember them. And Charles and Dorothy talked for quite a period of time, and Dorothy knew couples that were collecting Carnival glass. And we knew couples that were collecting Carnival glass that she didn't know about. And so Dorothy and Charles decided that each would call the couples that they knew and see if they would be interested in getting together one Sunday a month at one of their homes and looking at their collection and talking Carnival glass, and if you'd gotten any new pieces, why take the new pieces with you and share them. And so that's what we did. And for some period of time, the 9 couples went to each other's homes one Sunday afternoon a month and shared Carnival glass together. This went on for a period of time. Then in 1972, the 9 couples decided that they would like to form a formal Carnival glass club and elect officers. And that's what we did, and that was the beginning of HOACGA. So, that goes back a ways. We have traveled from coast to coast and have gone to many auctions and conventions, and we thoroughly enjoy going. When we had the nursing home, we weren't always free to go. We were very tied down to the nursing home. But when we were able to go, we did go, and we thoroughly enjoyed them. And we have been fortunate enough to collect some beautiful pieces of glass, which we thoroughly enjoy. But our most precious possessions that we have collected along the way has not been our Carnival glass, but it's been our friends. And for your friendship, we thank you. And for coming today, we thank you.
Congratulations again. It's been our pleasure to give you the award. Bob, is there anything you'd like to present?
Well, see that Mavis just left. But anyway, this is, as you stated before, that this is George and Mavis's 50th anniversary. So we would like to present them with a card that the members have signed, and for a bouquet of roses for your 50th. I think that George and Mavis have, I guess this is maybe a cheap way for George to have his anniversary celebrations come to the Carnival. We appreciate your coming each year, George, and hope that you are able to attend and can continue to come back in many, many more years. So congratulations on a very important milestone in your life.
The annual meeting, Bob, is going to be in this room?
In this room, yes.
Okay, it's about 10 after 2. We'll take a break, and those of you who would like to attend the annual meeting, it'll be right here at 2:30. So thanks again for coming.